The Conservative leadership candidates participated in a French language debate last night and were all worse off because of it. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the program. Originally, I was going to air an interview that I did with Tom Flanagan today in a sort of recognition of the one-year anniversary of the apparent discovery of unmarked graves. But given the fact that there was a Conservative debate last night, I think we're going to push that interview. We'll air it next week. And today I want to talk to you about the debate that happened last night. Now, originally, I wasn't going to cover it because I don't think that there's a lot of interest in Conservative circles and in Canada, frankly, to listen to a French language debate. There's such a small percentage of Conservative members who speak French, and I think we're better served having debates in English. I don't think a lot of people tuned in last night, and I think the viewership numbers will show that. We don't know them yet, but just judging by the number of people watching them on YouTube and social media platforms last night, it was a small fraction of what we had watching the debates, the English language debate that happened in Edmonton a few weeks ago. And I just want to say, I think it is a disservice to Conservatives and more broadly to Canadians that we had this spectacle, this charade, pretending that we should give equal weight to French and English language. It doesn't make sense for the Conservative Party. We know that the Conservative Party is a party based mostly out of Western Canada. That is where the bulk of the support of the party comes from, not just now, but traditionally as well. Quebeckers don't vote for the Conservative Party in large numbers, no matter what the strategy, no matter the candidate, no matter how well they speak French or how poorly they speak French. We're going to go through the stats and numbers, but the idea that there should be two equally weighted debates, right? There's two official debates in the Conservative leadership race, the English one and the French one, and it's over now. We're done. No more debates. The decision doesn't come until September, so we're now 4 months out, and we're not going to have another debate. That was it. Maybe someone will plan something and try to throw something together over the summer. But at this point, the candidates have no more debates. So that was the last opportunity that we had. And again, I think it's a disservice that it happened in French. And as we saw last night, for those who did tune in, the French debate, it was humiliating, right? We have 6 candidates on the stage. 3 of them speak French fairly well. I think that Jean Charest is obviously a native French speaker. Pierre seems to have very good French, Pierre Poilievre. And it looks like Patrick Brown has been working on his French. So you had those 3 candidates who were actively participating, who really were the debate. And then the other 3 candidates, Roman Baber, Leslie Lewis, and Scott Aitchison, weren't really part of the debate at all. They were just sort of on stage. Every now and then they would read a line that they had or a prepared statement that they had in French, but they weren't really participating. They weren't following along. They weren't able to jump in and interject with their opinions and ideas because it's really hard to follow a fast-moving debate in another language that you barely understand. And so it was pretty clear that those 3 candidates don't speak French fluently enough to be able to actively participating. So again, we just heard them kind of repeating the same thing over. It was humiliating for them. It was insulting for the crowd. I mean, the crowd is there, the French-speaking crowd in Laval, Quebec, they're there to hear a debate, and to have candidates forced to read a statement that really doesn't have anything to do with what the debate is about, because a lot of times it was just really lost in translation. Those 3 candidates didn't really understand what the questions were, the context, the actual direction that the debate had gone. Every time they spoke, it was just kind of a distraction, and it didn't make for good viewing. It didn't make for an entertaining debate, and it didn't really make for a good exchange of ideas, which is exactly what you want to see from a debate. The whole idea is to have them debate. So why not stick to English, the language that all 6 of them fluently speak, instead of the spectacle of trying to force Conservatives to speak French? And let me just say, on the Conservative side of the aisle, it's hard enough to recruit really good talent into politics, okay? If you're a very smart, capable, talented, competent person who has a conservative worldview, who is sort of pro-free market, pro-business, believes in a sort of tradition of our structures and is generally speaking pro-Western liberal democracy and capitalism, you're more likely to be successful in the private sector. You're more likely to be a business owner or an entrepreneur or an executive at a big company. You're more likely to be successful in that realm. And it's really hard to take people who are successful over there and convince them to come into politics. That's hard enough as it is. Add on top of that the layer of the fact that the media hates conservatives. And so whoever comes in to the conservative fray is automatically going to get smeared as soon as they're the leader or as soon as they're running in an election. We saw this with, interestingly, Chris Alexander, who was a very respected diplomat in Canadian political circles. He came into the fray of politics. He joined the Harper Conservatives, eventually becoming the immigration minister. And he talked about how kind of blindsided he was by the smears that are regularly aimed against conservatives. It's so different than for liberals. They will ruin your life and attack every angle of you. So this already makes that's two shots against conservatives, right? Number one is that most competent, capable people who lean conservative are successful in business and have no interest in politics. The second is that the media will destroy your life. And the third one is that this idea that you must speak French in order to be the conservative leader. You basically eliminate like 60% of the Canadian population from ever being able to want to get involved in federal politics. I remember Kevin O'Leary, when he was running for leader of the Conservative Party, he talked about this. He didn't speak French. He was a businessman. He's from Ontario. He never learned French. He's not from a bilingual family. That's just not part of his life. And this idea that he was going to be forced to learn French, he was like, that's not worth my time. There's so many other things that I would rather do if I'm going to lead this party and going to lead this country, I would rather focus on. Making me learn French is a distraction. I think that's completely right. And I think that the numbers bear this out. So again, by participating in this event, by putting it on equal footing, saying we're going to have two official debates, one in English, one in French, it backs up this idea that conservatives must speak French in order to become prime minister. And I think that's a dangerous position and a dangerous precedent. And it doesn't help when it comes to electoral outcomes. So conservatives don't win in Quebec. That's the reality. Conservatives currently have 10 seats in the province of Quebec. The most that they've won in recent elections was 12, and that was in 2015, right? So no matter what conservatives do, they have a very, 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 very small footprint in Quebec. The majority of people in Quebec don't like the conservatives, won't vote for the conservatives. They have fundamental differences in terms of their worldview and their values. And so the fact that we waste so much time, the conservatives waste so much time trying to make inroads, trying to win in Quebec, participating in the spectacle that we saw in the debate last night, it doesn't help, right? It doesn't help. And the reality is the majority of Canadians don't speak French. Only 22% of Canadians have French as their first language. That's about just a little under 8 million. And then another 6 million are bilingual. So Canadians from the rest of the country who have learned to speak French or have French families. A lot of those people live in other sort of bilingual areas, like Francophones in Ontario or in New Brunswick. So just a few more stats on the official languages according to the census. So you can go through and you can see by province what percentage of the population is bilingual. So Newfoundland 5%, PEI 12%, Nova Scotia 10%, New Brunswick 33%. Those aren't provinces, again, where conservatives do very well or win very well, but 11% of people in Ontario are bilingual. And then once you start to go west, those numbers really drop off, right? 8%, Saskatchewan 4.7% are bilingual, Alberta 6.6%, British Columbia 6.8%. So really, there's not a lot of need out west to learn French. It doesn't seem like an important language. I mean, I grew up in British Columbia, and I remember in grade 11, they started offering Spanish at my school, and most of the students got out of French and started taking Spanish because, I don't know, maybe they thought it was more useful or a language that they would actually use in the world. French isn't that useful out west. The point that J.J. McCullough makes, a journalist who I've talked about this topic on the show with before, he talks about how the only real reason that you could learn French is if you're forced into a situation where you have to speak French, right? It's not just a choice that you can go take some courses at a local community college and learn French. The way that you're going to learn French is if you're in a situation where you must speak French to survive. You have no other option. And the reality is in Western Canada, that's never the situation that you're going to confront unless you go and choose to spend a year abroad or go spend some time in a very kind of French part of Quebec, not Montreal, but outside. want to draw your attention to a really interesting op-ed written by Ken White, who is a conservative publisher. And he picked up on this topic again. He said that conservatives think the next party leader should be bilingual. They're wrong. Now, this was a older op-ed that he wrote back when Aaron O'Toole was running for leader. This was back in January 2020, but the points are still very relevant, and I want to explain why. So Ken White says this. He says, bilingualism is not a constitutional or legislative requirement for a party leader or prime minister. It's not even a convention. Bilingualism as a leadership credential arose relatively recently in our history in response to a discrete event, the rise of separatist sentiment in Quebec. The retiring Liberal Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, thought it advisable under the circumstances that his predecessor be a bilingual French-Canadian capable of countering the appeal of René Lévesque. So it's not constitutional, it's not a legislative requirement, and it's not even a convention. This is a very recent undertaking, this idea that the Canadian Prime Minister would be bilingual, and it came from the Liberal side. And look, maybe it makes sense that a Liberal Prime Minister would be bilingual because Liberals tend to win most of the seats in Quebec, or at least they compete with the Bloc for those seats in Quebec. Whereas the idea that the Conservative Party, the other party, would also have to have a bilingual leader, it doesn't make sense. It's not part of our convention, and it's all very, very recent that Conservatives have decided that they must have a bilingual leader. I'll continue reading from Ken White's piece. He says, election after election, Conservatives chose bilingual leaders with an eye to cracking the Quebec electorate. Election after election, they fail. In 15 attempts since the end of the Diefenbaker-Pearson era, bilingual non-Quebeckers leading the Conservative, Progressive Conservative, or the Canadian Alliance Party, so those are all just the recent iterations of Conservative parties federally, they have won a total of 66 seats, okay? 66 seats in 15 elections. That's an average of 4.4 seats per election. So all of this effort, all of this focus, this whole idea on shrinking the talent pool to an incredibly small pool just to find a guy or a gal who can speak French, and yet what has that resulted in? About on average 4 seats per election. It's really staggering that this is where we are as a conservative movement, and the Conservative Party is so focused on this, given the data here. So Ken White continues. He says the bilingual Albertan Joe Clark won 3 seats in Quebec in 2 federal elections, 1979 and 1980. The bilingual British Columbian Kim Campbell took 1 seat in 1993. The fluently bilingual Jean Charest, who's now running again, well, he also ran for leader of the PC party in 1997, and the rehabilitated Joe Clark, leading the rump of the PC party in 97 and 2000 respectively, earned 6 seats between them. So yes, you got that right. Jean Charest, when he led the PC party back in 1997, he only won 5 seats in Quebec, 5 seats, despite being from Quebec and obviously fluently bilingual. Ken White continues. He says, they fail because Quebec isn't attracted to bilingual leaders from outside Quebec. In every election since the retirement of Lester B. Pearson, Quebec has given the vast majority of its seats to a Quebecker. What Quebec wants is what Americans call a favorite son, or presumably a favorite daughter would do as well, one of their own, a Brian Mulroney, a Gilles Duceppe, or a Jack Layton. You get this? So Quebecers are not going to vote for a bilingual Canadian who's not from Quebec. That's what the stats, that's what history shows us, that it doesn't matter if you speak perfectly fluent French, if you spend all your time campaigning in Quebec, the people of Quebec are going to vote for their own favorite son, their own native Quebecer. So all of these efforts to find a fluently bilingual candidate, to find a conservative who has perfect French, it's all basically just a waste of time. Final point from Ken White. He says, Preston Manning, who did not speak French, his Reform Party did not win a single seat in Quebec in 1993 or 97. The Canadian Alliance brought in Stockwell Day, who was bilingual, who did speak French, and he matched Preston Manning's record with 0 seats in Quebec. So it didn't matter that Stockwell Day was fluently French versus Preston Manning, who did not speak French. They both won 0 seats in Quebec. That's because Quebec values don't match up with the conservative values by and large. And so again, the whole spectacle of last night, the whole idea that we have 2 debates, one in French, one in English, just reiterates this I think, flawed notion, this foolish notion that conservatives can somehow crack through in Quebec. All we have to do is pander more and speak better French, and somehow that will change things. Well, we can just go through the election results. So in 2021, when Aaron O'Toole lost the election, he got 10 seats in Quebec. 10 out of 78 seats went to the Conservatives. The Conservatives won 119 seats. Only 10 of those were in Quebec, despite Aaron O'Toole's French, despite him spending a lot of time working on his French and a lot of time campaigning in Quebec. Likewise, Andrew Scheer, who also speaks French fluently, he only won 10 seats in Quebec. Again, despite having a very significant Quebec strategy, gearing many of his policies towards Quebec, spending a lot of time in Quebec, only 10 seats out of the Conservatives' 120, only 10 seats out of Quebec's 78 seats. So not a lot of results, right? Prime Minister Harper, same thing. He spoke French, 12 seats. 12 seats in Quebec in 2015. In his majority government, his historic majority government in 2011, Stephen Harper won a mere 5 seats in Quebec. So this idea that you need to speak French and you need to make inroads in Quebec in order to win an election, it's just not true. It's obviously not true given what has happened over the past 30, 40 years, and we can see that. And so I think Conservatives would be better off focusing on the areas where they can win, trying to win over voters in suburban parts of the country and perhaps even more urban parts of the country, and not do this whole spectacle where they humiliate their own candidates by forcing them up on the stage and pretending that speaking French is the quintessential foundational value to becoming a prime minister in this country. It's just not true. So let's get to the debate itself. Unfortunately, the majority of Canadians did not watch the debate and will not watch the debate, which is too bad because overall I thought it was a pretty good debate. The moderator, Marc-Olivier Fortin, who is a longtime Conservative activist and insider, is a former staffer, a former member of the National Council in Quebec. He was moderator. He did a pretty good job, pretty decent job. You could see that the Conservative Party was pushing the same kind of rules and nonsense that they did at the Edmonton debate, because the moderator was constantly shushing the crowd, telling them not to clap, not to applaud, not to boo, not to participate in the debate at all, just to basically sit there silently with their, sitting on their hands and not participating, which again defeats the whole purpose of doing a debate in front of a live audience. But overall, the debate format allowed for actual debate back and forth between the candidates. The questions were a lot better. The questions were certainly Quebec heavy and focused on Quebec, but they also touched on important issues that matter to Canadians, things like energy, inflation, COVID restrictions, and a little bit on foreign affairs. So I thought overall it was a better debate. Of course, the way that it was broadcasted was a problem because basically, again, most people watching these debates are going to be English speaking, and the way that we were watching it was online through these feeds, and the way that the translators were translating the debate just didn't really work. They had one person that was translating for each of the candidates. And so when you're thinking about a debate where they're kind of going back and forth, and you just have one voice that is translating for all the candidates, it was confusing as to who was saying what. Usually, if you have six people on the stage and you have translators, you would at least want 2 or 3 different translators that are assigned to different candidates so that you could see the back and forth, you could hear who was saying what. But the way that they had it translated really didn't make for good TV at all. There were also some technical issues. The feed continued to freeze. It froze multiple times, and so you'd be right in the middle of an exchange, and then the screen would freeze, and then it would come back like 2 minutes later, and they'd be talking about something totally different. One of the things that we saw was that the lines of attack were pretty similar to what we had seen in previous debates. They were kind of just really repeating themselves at this point. The candidates all accused Pierre of telling people to make bad investments when it came to Bitcoin, accusing him of, saying, if you took Pierre Poilievre's advice, you lose your life savings and your grandparents would lose their pensions or something like that because of Bitcoin, which is total nonsense. We heard the same lines of attack about abortion and the trucker convoy against Pierre Poilievre. When it came to Charest, we saw the attacks about his record as Quebec Premier, his job with Huawei, and his position on carbon taxes. Same with Brown. Same accusations were leveled against him about how he flip-flopped and how he used to be very opposed to carbon taxes until he became leader of the Progressive Conservative Party Ontario, when all of a sudden he changed his tune and announced that he was for those carbon taxes. So nothing new there. There were a couple of highlights from the debate that I'll play for you. I think this is sort of a new line of attack that they are levying against Pierre Poilievre. So this is going to be Patrick Brown, who accuses Poilievre of supporting Pat King. Pat King is a racist, white supremacist guy who sort of tried to cling on to the trucker convoy. The media really gave him an outsized platform and pretended that he was the leader of the convoy because he was the only guy that they could find saying despicable things. And basically they wanted the trucker convoy to be a group of stupid racists. They found one stupid racist and made him a star. And so Patrick Brown is sort of giving credence to the media narrative lies about the trucker convoy and using it to pile on to Pierre Poilievre. So here is what that exchange looked like.
Well, on a daily basis, I've been working very hard to build our party and to attract new members. I want to build a multicultural party, but there's a problem. As Mr. Poilievre has said, he supports Pat King, who has attacked our immigration system. Mr. Poilievre said it's important to use Anglo-Saxon vocabulary. How can he actually hope to expand our party when he uses that terminology? People want to build a bigger party, a party that can lead this country. That's not true, Mr. Brown. I rejected Mr. King. I've spoken out against him and against what he said. I've said that openly. I'm open to immigration and to diversity.
Okay, so I made this point on the show before, but I will repeat it. This whole line of attack, this whole accusation here is not good for Conservatives. And I put the blame on both Patrick Brown and Pierre Poilievre for this. So again, Patrick Brown is repeating the lies of the media and giving them credibility, which is not helpful. This idea that white nationalists and Conservatives are all intertwined and that the trucker convoy was really about racism and not about freedom just hurts the credibility of so many people on the right. And Conservatives shouldn't be the one bringing that into the fold. So that's on Patrick Brown. I don't like his strategy. I don't like what he's doing here. I think the Conservatives should use a loud voice and just say, enough, Patrick Brown, stop giving the media narratives credibility. Just stop. This isn't true. And then blame also falls, of course, on Pierre Poilievre for even allowing these accusations to have oxygen. Like he needs to very firmly, very clearly denounce this idea, say that I never supported Patrick King. And loudly distance himself. And I know he did that in the clip, but I would like to see him be even more fierceful and unequivocal in the idea that he would have anything to do with these stupid racists that are trying to, I don't know, have their 15 minutes of fame or whatever. Pierre Poilievre is absolutely right that this is very much dividing Conservatives, and it's unfortunate to see. Another interesting moment at the debate I thought last night was this moment. So Jean Charest, he's done this in every single debate so far. He accuses Pierre Poilievre of supporting the Freedom Convoy, and he calls that convoy an illegal blockade. What I think is interesting about this clip is the reaction of the crowd, because you can see the crowd really reacts to Jean Charest's accusation. It stirred quite the controversy in the room, so much so that you'll see the moderator had to sort of get up and say, order, please, stop. So I'm going to play that clip. Just notice the crowd reaction, because it is really interesting. Here's that clip.
It's a bit ironic to hear Mr. Poilievre talk about law and order. He's the one who supported an illegal blockade in Ottawa. Remember that. Please, order.
You can see Pierre Poilievre kind of laughing there because the crowd is booing Jean Charest, but you could also hear that the crowd is cheering. So the crowd is split. Some people in the crowd are very loudly booing Jean Charest. Other people in the crowd are cheering for him. You can hear that they sort of start chanting his name, Charest. So I think the room is divided. I don't think it's unanimous that everyone there supported the trucker convoy, but just really interesting that in Quebec, in Laval, Quebec, a very French heavy population, that these people, they don't follow the media narrative that the trucker convoy was a group of racists. You can see that there is a lot of support for the sentiment and the idea, the notion behind the trucker convoy in that room, which I think is really interesting, kind of counter to the media narrative. I think the media narrative is that the trucker convoy was a bunch of rednecks from Western Canada. I don't think that's true. I think that the majority of the people at that convoy were from Quebec and Ontario, and that was why it was such a threat to Justin Trudeau. That's why he wanted to get rid of it ASAP, because the trucker convoy was much more popular in Quebec than a lot of these elites feel comfortable with. Okay, final clip I want to show you was this interesting line of attack, which I hadn't heard before. This was new to me. So Pierre Poilievre accusing Patrick Brown of breaking the law. He highlights a 2018 Globe and Mail report that alleges that Patrick Brown took money from a candidate for the down payment on a multi-million-dollar waterfront home that he bought. So Patrick Brown had originally said that the money to buy that home came from his mother. He said that his mom was the one that helped him buy the house. And then records came out that showed that it wasn't actually his mom who helped him buy that house. It was a candidate, one of the candidates that ran under Patrick Brown when he was leader of the PC party in Ontario, an individual called Jal Johal, who is a paralegal in Brampton, Ontario. Apparently he deposited $375,000 into Patrick Brown's account in June of 2016. This all came out, and the ethics watchdog reprimanded Patrick Brown when he was leader of that party for failing to disclose this. He later called it a loan. So really, really interesting in story. You can see in this clip how Pierre Poilievre brought this up and how Patrick Brown defended himself. Here's that clip.
Mr. Brown, you have no credibility on law and order. You were found guilty of having broken the integrity rules. You've said that the money you used to buy your $2 million home came from your family. But after investigation, we now know that this money came from someone that was a candidate for you. How can you forget where $375,000 comes from, Mr. Brown? Whoops. You thought it came from your family, but all of a sudden you realized during the investigation that, in fact, the money had come from a candidate. No one believes you when you say that you're in favor of law and order, when you were found guilty yourself of having broken the law by hiding that payment. You're just like Justin Trudeau, who hides the gifts people give to him as well, and the donations people give to him. Mr. Brown, the only person here who has broken the law, the electoral law, is Mr. Poilievre. At the same time, I won't take any lessons from Mr. Poilievre. He's a person who has made secret deals. It's much easier for Poilievre to attack other Conservatives. That's his policy. That's his approach, really, isn't it?
Okay, so those were some of my favorite parts of the debate. Those were some of the highlights that I could find. And again, you can see how, from a viewer perspective, it was hard to enjoy the debate just because of the weird way that it was translated. And of course, again, the fact that it was in French, a language that most Conservatives do not speak. And there was one other element of the debate that really played in. There was an entire section of the debate on Quebec focused on protecting Quebec, giving Quebec its special status, protecting the French language, giving the French language its special status. A lot of the debate was geared towards those questions. So we just saw repeated pandering from the candidates, basically all pledging that they love French, that they want to do more to protect French, they want to do more to ensure that Canadians across the country speak French. They were specifically asked about the appointment of the Governor General. The current Governor General of Canada doesn't speak French, and that is very controversial in Quebec. So they're basically all cudgeled into pledging that they would only appoint French-speaking candidates to top positions of the civil service. And they would do more to protect the French language. But you can juxtapose that support and that pandering that we saw from all the candidates when it came to French with the discussions around Bill 21. So Of course, Bill 21 is the bill that prohibits government employees, anyone from prosecutors to police officers to teachers, from wearing religious symbols, so specifically a headscarf or a turban, while carrying out their civic duties. So this is very controversial federally. In Quebec itself, it's not that controversial. It's actually very popular. Polls show that somewhere between 55 and 70% of Quebeckers support Bill 21, whereas the candidates last night, every single one of them opposed Bill 21. They all said that it goes against religious freedom and that religious freedom is a cornerstone of the conservative ideology and the conservative worldview. And so this idea that they're all up there pandering about French language and participating in this French debate and saying that they love Quebec, they're going to do more to protect Quebec. But then the main issue that is really, really popular in Quebec and unpopular among the rest of Canadians, Bill 21, they all came out against it, which again just shows why conservatives don't win in Quebec, because their values don't align, right? They don't see things the same way as people from Quebec. And I think this issue, Bill 21, illustrates that perfectly, that no matter how much they pander, they're not going to win over people because they don't share the fundamental values that Quebecers look for. And again, I think that's why last night's debate ultimately was just a total waste of time. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.